it's a bit large for a class, but we're going to give it a shot for a classroom. So we do need to try to stretch ourselves a little bit to speak up and have dialogue. It's going to be important. I forget exactly what Tommy was just saying. Did he leave? Oh, there you are. But it made me think of Emil Brunner's line, "The church exists for mission as fire exists for burning." The relationship between the church and mission is not causal, it is definitional. If that makes sense, if you could follow me. There is no such thing as the church without mission. Now, we have existential encounters with things that are called church, which do not entail mission. And so that's created what's, in classic logic is called a fallacy of equivocation. You're calling it this, we're calling it this, but we're talking about two different things. So, definitionally, mission is central. So we're meant to talk about that today. I'd like to do a couple things. It's just a little loud, maybe. Yeah. I'd like to look at a text. I mean, the whole New Testament is an apologetic for mission. I actually really struggled in the last couple of days to think, what do I want to talk about this? I looked at previous notes for this class that when I did it years ago, whatever, and I just had no interest in anything in that. But I was particularly disinterested in this set of notes. I don't know why. It was so growth oriented, and maybe I'll be honest with you a little bit later about why that is, why that bothers me now. It's probably just a slight correction, a slight course correction in posture towards the question of mission, the concern of mission, the burden of mission, and what it means for us or what it should mean for us. But I struggled a little bit to figure out what to say. And part of the reason why is because every single message I've probably ever given, thousands, are all about mission. I only have the one sermon, really. So the struggle for me was not to think of what to say on this topic, it's what to think not to say. And how do we make sense of this right now? So in this moment in time, in the life and the evolution of the underground, of your microchurch, of the times in which we live, I just listened to a Martin Luther King sermon yesterday called "The Knock at Midnight." If you've never heard any of his actual preaching, his sermons, and he talked about that story of the friend who comes and knocks at the door at midnight and tries to wake his friend up to give him some bread or whatever, and he's asleep, and he's like, "I'm asleep with my kids." But of course, as only King can, he just talks about it being midnight in America. And midnight, he says, socially and morally and psychologically. And I just was moved by the sermon because I thought, man, it's still midnight. And in our own way, in our own time. It's not 1966, but in our own time, it's still, we still have that sort of social, moral, and psychological darkness that we all wrestle with. It's encroaching on us. I may say more. I mean, in some ways, you can think the primary motif for mission is light penetrating darkness. It is the overcoming of darkness by the light and all that means. Jesus said, "I am the light of the world." He spoke of himself. He said, as long as it's day, and it won't always be day. Night is coming, he said that. But as long as it's day, I have to do the work the Father has sent me. This is the mantra of the missionary. As long as I can, I have to do the work that God has sent me to do, which means you have to know what that particular unique work is for you to do. You're not meant to take on the whole mission of God. That's impossible. But there's a piece of it, a slice of it that belongs to you. It's meant to be owned by you and only you. And somehow when the people of God report to God in obedience and fealty to Him and say, "Give me my assignment, I'll take it," then the potential for transformation is breathtaking. Actually, what's possible, what the world would look like if the people of God, the church of God, was activated simply by the obedience to their own assignments. We shouldn't have to convince anyone that the church is missionary. It's a strange heresy. It's a syncretism. It's the fact that we have to wrestle with somebody about whether or not mission should be central or core to what it means to be a person who loves Jesus or is in relationship with Jesus. It's just a nonsense. But here we are. Less so probably with you, but so what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a look. I just chose this text because it stood out to me and felt fresh. So I've given you this 2 Corinthians 5, this piece from 2 Corinthians 5. I want to do a little quick Bible study with you on it. And then I'd like to sort of wrestle with three questions. And because the room is full of missionaries, I don't want to presume that I'm the only person that should have thoughts on this. So I would love to mine your experience and your wisdom as well. And maybe three questions. What are the preconditions to mission? In other words, what has to exist before we can really be effective as missionary people? Two, what are the threats, the primary reasons why we fail in ongoing mission or break down or give up or whatever? What are the kind of big key threats to mission? And then lastly, what are some ideas for, I don't know, creative resilience, how we stay in the game and still keep our hearts close to God and stay focused and committed to the assignment that He's given us. Okay, so those three questions, I'd love to hear what you think. So I want to catalog our thoughts on what we think the preconditions are, what we think the threats are, and what we think good ideas that keep us engaged over time. Does that sound okay? You with me? Just say, yeah, sure. Say a word. It's good. It gets your vocal cords going. So you've officially already talked in this class. So here we go. But let's look at this text. So just to frame this is mission as the ministry of reconciliation. This is Paul's lovely turn of phrase here to describe not only his own work, but what he thinks the work of the church is. So just take a minute and read this first half, this first section here. Mission as the ministry of reconciliation. Take a second to read that. Okay, I want you to read it again, but this time as you read it, we're looking for definition. So I want to define mission. What is this text? What clues does it give us to what is mission? So anything that you see that could be a point of definition for mission, circle it. So read it again this time, but this time engage it that way. You can bring back on the creepy music. Cool. Is that enough time? No, I got a finger waggle. I got a finger waggle. I appreciate that. It's good communication. A few more seconds. Okay. We're gonna do a speed reading class next month. Well, okay, just real quick. First, what popped when you read it this time? Like what surprised you, or what's just a couple of observations about this text? Anybody? Come on. Yeah, awesome. What else? You would make a good ambassador, Marcy. I could see it. Yeah, you're regal like that. Some of you not so much, but what else? Come on.
The profound partnership, like we are doing something, persuading and imploring, but also God is doing something in us and around us and through us. So He's compelled us and convinced us and all that. So there's a partnership.
Yeah.
Activity happening.
Yeah, great. All of this is from God, he says. Okay, so come on. Definitionally, what do we get from this little excerpt on what mission is? Just give me anything from the text that might reveal something about what mission is.
So in verse 20, where it says, "We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, and as though God were making his appeal."
Okay. So give me more. What does that reveal about what mission is? Okay. Great. Great. So ambassadorship has something to do with travel, right? Being in a place you're not from, or going to a people you're not used to, like movement. Excellent. What else? Yes. So, I mean, essentially what Paul is giving us here is he's saying mission itself is reconciliation. That is the work of mission. There's an equivocation happening. Everything we think of and call mission, he's saying, is actually a reconciliation. Does that make sense to you? Work that out with me. Talk to me. How does that make sense? How might that be true?
Yeah, I mean, this part of scripture was standing out to me. I was just thinking how great of an image it is to think of, like, people who are in broken relationship, and you say that they need to reconcile, right? So, God being, there's something broken between God and his created world. So, us as ambassadors, we're working to make right the relationship between God and his world. It's just like that whole thing that we read that, and what our job is in that is really helpful.
What else? Yeah, love that. Yeah. And that mission at its core is persuasion. Come on, guys. There is every line here gives you something like you're probably not doing, or something to think about, something to do, something to work with, some material to work with. Mission is, according to Paul here in his description, this massive work of reconciling the world to God, this broken relationship, the world to itself, people to themselves, all that, and it's done primarily through persuasion.
How does that correlate with somewhere else in Corinthians he talks about, I'm not trying to be persuasive and eloquent so that people are not convinced by me, but by God's power instead.
Well, that's the first book, not the second book. But yeah, maybe he changes his mind. That's 1 Corinthians, but yeah, no. So that I mean, what a lovely question. So in 1 Corinthians, he comes from Athens. So if you know Paul's experience in Athens, he is in the Areopagus every day. He's debating with the philosophers of the day. He's styling himself as a philosopher, and he tells he keeps engaging. And every day they say in the Areopagus, they say, "Come back again. This was really interesting. What a fascinating guy you are. What fascinating ideas about Jesus." But after many, many months of doing that, hardly anyone has come to faith. And he becomes so frustrated, so disenchanted with that experience of just talking to people about philosophy, and nobody really wants to make any change, that he leaves Athens broken. In fact, it's the most broken we see Paul anywhere in any of his life and journeys is between Athens to Corinth. When he goes from Athens then to Corinth, he basically leaves with his tail between his legs and he goes, what am I even doing? Anyone ever felt that way? In mission, what am I even doing? Like, what was even the point? This is how he feels. And the reason why, and by the way, he was in situations where they tried to kill him, beat him, and he was happier leaving that mission environment. And also times when there was great revival and people responded. But the thing he could not stomach, which I think is really interesting as a sort of prototype missionary, the thing he could not stomach was apathy, was no response. Hate me or love me, but don't just like go, well, this is cool. Yeah, let's keep talking, you know. It's the last thing he wanted. So he comes into Corinth and he writes to them, when I came to you, I resolved in myself to preach nothing but Christ and Christ crucified. Where's the philosopher of the age? Where's the wise man? All that stuff is foolish. He comes to this conclusion, like none of that matters. All that matters is Jesus Christ and him crucified. So he doesn't come to the conclusion, I don't persuade people. He's come to the conclusion, all I care about is Jesus and Jesus crucified. That's it. I don't get involved in this other stuff anymore. At least at that point in his life, he doesn't want to. But he never stops trying to persuade people. But to do what? I mean, he tells you here, be reconciled to God. You know? What else? What other kind of hints toward a definition are in this text?
I don't know if this connects with the persuasion, but the idea of appeal or implore. So like there's, to me that just adds more, like persuasion is kind of like I'm trying to convince you, but this is like I'm imploring you, I'm appealing to you. So to me it just has a different temperature to it, connotation to it. So.
Yeah, sure. It's emotional. And actually there's other little symbols in here about emotion.
I think the big piece is to no longer live for themselves.
Okay. Great. Come on, what else?
It's not easy. It takes great endurance.
Okay. Mission is not easy. Uh-huh.
I think it's at a point also when you come to resolve at the end of the step. And it is it's a real freeing place when you're kind of like on a mission field that has the types of tumultuous everything that falls on it. So, yeah.
Yep. Anything else? Yes. Yes. I mean, what compels him, he's saying, is the love of Jesus, right? That's interesting. I mean, do you think, I would give you two options. Do you think he means by that the love that Christ has shown to him, or the love that he sees him showing to others, to the world? What is it that compels him? Both? A safe answer.
Because one died for all, and therefore all died. So I do wonder if there's some kind of like the inclusion. I love others because he's loving me first.
Yes.
That combination.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, here's a couple things that I would take from this. One, mission is persuasion. Two, mission comes from the heart. He says this, what is seen rather than what is in the heart. The issue, the concern of Paul is like, don't worry about what you're looking at. This comes from our heart. Mission comes from the heart. It must come from the heart. Mission is persuasion, but it's persuasion that comes from the guts. It comes from the heart. It comes from a genuine desire and a longing for someone to have something good, to care about them. We all know what it's like to be the object of mission, which is not from the heart. It's either from greed, or like someone knocking on your door trying to sell you solar panels or something. That's mission, not from the heart. It's not for you. They'll tell you it's for you, but it's not for you. It's for them. It's for them to make a commission. Do you understand? That's the difference between sales, the persuasion that comes through sales, and what we're talking about, which is something that has to do with, actually, this is really hard for me to do. I'd much rather be at home watching Netflix or doing something else or building my career, but instead I'm going to walk into your world and care about you, not because of something I gain, but something you gain. And actually, it costs me something to be here, so it has to come from the heart. It's done for God and for people. I love this little thing here where he says, are we out of our minds? Some say that. If that's true, then we're out of our minds for God. If you say, no, you're making perfect sense, well, then that's for you. But the point is, mission is both for God and for you and for others. So what is the motive that moves us towards mission? Is the motive, I'm just trying to save people or help people, or is it I'm trying to obey God? And he's saying it's both things. I am committed to he sees both things being important. The idea that Jesus dies first for his Father before he dies for us. It's not just that he dies for the love of people, to save people, but he dies out of obedience to his Father. He dies because his Father asks him to. And so mission is both a response to the call of God on us, and it's also a concern towards others. It's like seeing someone in need, right? It is a compulsion born from love. A compulsion born from love. I think there's so much power in this word compelled. To feel, in other words, I can't not do this. And look, you're probably here, you're probably part of the underground because you have felt and experienced that compulsion. Almost a sense that I can't not help these people. I cannot ignore the plight, suffering, unbelief, lostness of said group of people, which is why you're here. There's lots of other places that you could be where they will say you're a good Christian person, and you don't have to think about this stuff. So, but you're in good company with Paul because he's saying actually the love of God compels us. There's something about that. This call to no longer live for yourself, I think that's core to what mission is. Mission is a call to lay down your life. When we go do mission, it's not just to get people to come to something or agree to something or make a propositional agreement or give money or join something. It is about laying down your life. Primarily, when Christ bids a man, he bids him come and die. This is the invitation is to self-death. It is to say, I no longer live, but Christ who lives in me. It's this completely counterintuitive thing of to lay down your life and to somehow find it in the laying down of it. To lose your life and to somehow find it. This is our message. And that's core to mission. There's no such thing as mission, which is just about helping people be happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. Mission is a call to lay down your life, to no longer live for yourself, which, by the way, builds into itself a sort of self-propagation. In other words, anybody that comes along and hears that message then becomes somebody committed again to the sort of salvation of others. It's built in. Another thing he says here, all this comes from God. Mission comes from God. Mission, we talk about the missio Dei, the mission of God. It's not that the church has a mission, it's that God has a mission, but he has a church. So look, the mission belongs to God. It's something he's already committed to doing. It's something he wants done. It's something he's concerned about. It somehow even grieves his heart that certain things exist, certain conditions exist in the world where evil reigns. I was just reading again in Luke's gospel where Jesus is before Pilate. This really struck me because when he's talking to Pilate, he says to him this line. He says, this is your moment. He said that to Pilate. I don't know if you remember that, but there's this thing where he says, this is your moment where evil reigns. In other words, yes, I see that you feel powerful, and yes, it's going to look like you're going to win, and you are going to win, and I'm going to lose in this altercation, and sometimes we lose. And sometimes it's evil's moment. And unfortunately, there's lots of those. And because evil has its moments, because there's all these sort of opportunities for sin and death to reign, God is caring, engaged, grieving over that in the world. Mission comes from God. Mission is modeled by God. This is incredible. What does he say? He reconciled us to himself through Christ and then gave us the ministry of reconciliation. So he did it first, and then he gave the ministry to us. He showed us how to do it himself and then gave that to us. I love this too, that he gave us. So it is a gift. The ministry of reconciliation is a gift. And to receive it, it may be the greatest and most precious gift you have besides your own salvation. To have received this work, started by Jesus, continued by his people, handed in some small way to you. It is a gift. It is a message that we carry with great responsibility, this ambassadorship idea. But it is a message. It is carried on words. It's carried on words. And then, of course, mission is God making an appeal through us. So actually, it is God doing the mission, not just you. So the appeal is being made by God through you. So if this is to be believed, there's never a time when you're engaged in the mission of God, sent by the heart of God, where it is not actually God himself at work in it. This is the greatest pathway towards intimacy that you can have as a Christian. Yeah.
I think also to kind of fit into this here, with people, I think it's chapter 9 of chapter 11, and it says, where God could find nothing else, he used his own arm to bring us to him. So in other words, to reconcile us back to him. So all this that all of us in the room are doing, and we're engaging in, we're members of that arm.
Yeah.
Continuing to bring humanity back to God.
Fantastic. I mean, even to say we are his body. What does that mean? Under one head. What does that mean? That means that we just do the thing he wants done. We are his sort of muscular exertion in the world. Is to say that as a hand or an arm or a shoulder or a leg, what we're doing and trying to accomplish is because it's something he wants done. The whole thing is about alignment to the heart and will of God in the world. This is why I don't love the idea of sort of organizational mission statements where you try to think, well, what's our mission going to be? The primary concern, at least as a Christian person, should be the mission of God. Now, whatever the mission of God is, what is our part to play within that? Sure, that's a question of calling that we have to answer. What's up, dude? No, he's happy. That's good. At least he's quiet. Some other kids, which will remain nameless, or sometimes loud. I remember. I remember the first time I met Jessica. Is she here? There you are. She's hiding there. As a freshman at the University of South Florida. So the first freshman I met. One of the first freshmen that had a dorm. And I was just like, really wanted to be in the dorms, So probably the second conversation we ever had, I was like, hey, can we do a Bible study together in your dorm room, And of course she said yes. I remember meeting Jeremy, same year, same campus, and thinking to myself, man, they might make a good team, these two. I could see them being really good co-leaders, And they were. They went on to probably have one of the most fruitful mission groups on campus, in the dorms at the time. How many years did you guys lead together as student leaders? Just that 1 year. You broke open the world. Yeah. Well, you were too good. We had to split you up and put you in multiple. You're both too good. Yeah, there's a common story that probably we all have. And it has something to do with discovering your part that you're meant to play. Going from being, I assume, I can't speak for them, but going from being just kind of a student on campus. And maybe you're thinking, well, I want to care a little about my spiritual life, so I'm somewhat interested. They probably came to a table that we were doing and thought, oh yeah, I should probably go to a Bible study or something like that. But then that leap you make, which happens, by the way, to all Christians. It should happen to all Christians in the work of maturity, is to go from being a disciple to being an apostle. This is this sort of strange transformation that happens in the life of the 12, even in the telling of the Gospels, where they're referred to as disciples, and the next thing you know, they're referred to as apostles. And what does apostleship mean? Apostle is just the Greek iteration of the word mission. Latin is missio, which means to be sent. Apostolo is the Greek word, which means to be sent. They're synonyms. Everybody goes from being a disciple. This is the work of maturity, is to go from being a disciple to being a missionary. And we probably all have, or should have, a conversion story of when we first realized to come and be a disciple, to drop our nets and follow Jesus. But there also was a second story that we probably all have, where we thought actually we're meant to pick up our nets and now go fish for people. This is the second part of the story. No one, even if you're listening early on where he says, hey, come and follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. You don't really listen to that. You're just listening to like, yeah, I'll come follow you. This guy seems amazing. And I don't have anything better going on, so I'll follow him. That's the disciple kind of conversion. But the second conversion is to say, actually, you're being sent. You're being sent. And that probably was one of the beginning for them to realize actually they're sent. And one of the most amazing thing about them as a couple, as a family, is that they took that identity, that apostolic identity, as 18-year-olds, and have nurtured it for the rest of their adult lives. Pass it on to their kids. I don't even know of a better example of a family or a couple that has committed themselves to mission in the way the Stevens have. Which is why during Bible study, their kids talk more than my kids. So disappointing. Lucas and Jamie, I remember, flying up to Carbondale to try to convince Lucas to let go of this budding little group and movement that he was doing and to come down and serve us. And same thing, to say yes to that call, to leave your family, to uproot yourself, to say, I'll leave everything I know and I'm comfortable with. And he's, Lucas he's from the farm. He's comfortable with green, leafy growing things and farm machinery and so on. And took him to the inner city of Tampa, and for them to say yes to that is a hearing. It's an apostolic urge, just to hear God say, "I want you to go. I'm sending you somewhere." And to uproot yourself and to take that risk and to pay that price is what they did. Just curious. I just mentioned Jeremy, Jessica, Lucas, and Jamie. Just by a show of hands, if you've been impacted in some way in your life by those 4 people, just raise your hand. So they say yes to God. I noticed some hands were down, by the way, who've been here for quite some time. So you're going to need to work on that. I don't know what that means, but I was expecting closer to 95 or something %, but some people just can't be helped. You know what I mean? Ain't helped me. Ain't helped me at all. Tommy and Bree, I flew down to Cayman, and they were living in an island paradise, building their own thing. Close to Bree's family. I think Tommy was thriving, you were less interested in leaving, probably, than Bree at the time, And yet, they said yes, they felt, they heard that specific call to uproot, to go, to be sent. Every one of you probably has a story like that. It's not always to go, across greater vast distances, but it's always to go somewhere, isn't it? It's always to pick up and count the cost and go somewhere. And maybe even to some degree to hear the call through the voice of another. This is Paul's point, that this is why we persuade people to not live for themselves, to take on this burden of the ministry of reconciliation, to become missionary people. If you think about your own story, probably there was someone involved in it. Probably there was another missionary person who invited you into that burden, who helped you see that part of what it means to be a friend of Jesus is to take on Jesus' concerns. Take on his burden. We always go. We are all sent somewhere. What does it mean to be missionary? It means you have been sent somewhere, to someone. We're all asked to drop our nets. We're all called to be transformed from disciples into apostles. Even you young guys over here, that call is on you too, to ask, where am I being called not just to be a disciple of Jesus, but where am I being sent by him to represent him? And it doesn't matter how old you are, you can still take on that mantle of an apostle. It's the story. The reason why we all have that same story is because of the proto-narrative of the incarnation itself. It's the story of God. Mission is the story of God himself, who looks at a sort of creaking world, bending and almost breaking under the weight of its own sin and its own darkness, and saying, I will go myself. I will reconcile them to myself, by myself, with myself. I will put my own blood into the covenant. And this, of course, is what the incarnation means. It's why Jesus comes. It's why the Father sends the Son. For God loved the world so much that he gave his only Son. He sends his Son into the world, not to condemn the world, but to save the world. Not to condemn the world, but to save the world. He sends his Son as a sacrifice, a ransom, a reconciliation, to bridge that gap, that chasm. You all know this. This is the gospel. But it's not just the gospel. It is a proto-narrative. It is the base story through which all our stories are told. It's not just a story that we look at and go, well, that's really great and that saved me. But it's a story that reshapes the rest of our lives once we've come in contact with it. His story becomes our story. Every story now, every Christian person, their life is meant to be an echo of that story, a reverberation of that same story. I mean, Jesus put it this way in John 17, as the Father has sent the Son, so the Son sends you. So I send you. As the Father has loved the Son, so I love you. In the same way that the Father sends the Son has sent you. It's a continuation. It's a baton being passed. And what are you given? You're given this incredible message, this incredible responsibility, this appeal. But not just that. He's not leaving you alone. He also sends with you His Spirit. And the empowerment of the Spirit and the baptism of the Spirit is the gift that not only makes this possible, the power to do it, but also animates the work itself. Mission itself is the coursing of the Holy Spirit through us and in us. Somewhere along the line, the Pentecostals told us that to speak in tongues was the great demonstration of the Spirit's power. And it is a demonstration of the Spirit's power. But the reason why speaking in tongues is a demonstration of the Spirit's power is because of Acts 2, when it was meant primarily as a lever for mission. It was so that the world could hear in their own language what? The wonders of God, spoken in their own languages. We have a way of doing that, don't we? Of sort of extracting the little bits of what it means to be Christian, to worship or music or teaching or little things that we think are important. But actually the thing that drives it all, that animates it all, is this desire for mission. The Spirit rested on him in his baptism. The Spirit rests on you. The Father said of the Son, "This is my Son in whom I'm well pleased." He's also pleased with you. You can't go into mission without that acceptance and love from the Father. He goes into the desert to fight the devil. So do you. He chooses people to teach and to live in community with, and so do we. He heals the sick. He casts out demons. He preaches good news of the coming kingdom, and so do we. He was resisted, and so will you be. He was used by God to point to the world about His coming, this kingdom where all things will be made new. And so do we. He gave all of Himself to that cause, and so should we. He was sent by the Father to do this certain thing in a certain time, in a certain place. And so do you. Certain assignment in a certain time, in a certain place. And knowing this, guys, knowing that that story is your story, is the key somehow to having life to the fullest. Not the easiest life, not the most prosperous life, not the happiest life, but the fullest possible life. There is no other way. And I love this compels thing. I think of, 1 John, where he says, this is how God showed His love among us. He sent His one and only Son. The whole thing is actually just about love. The whole thing is motivated by love. The whole thing is animated by love. The whole thing is defined by love. The whole thing is carried by love. If you want to understand mission in one word, it is simply that, to love. I love what Augustine said. He said, love and then do what you want. Anybody like that? His exact words, I think, were love God and then live as you will. Because this belief that if we were to love God fully, to be loved by God and to love Him fully, all your actions would be governed by that in a way that would be impeachable. I mean, same thing. Again, 1 John. This is love. Not that we loved God, but that He loved us. This is what love is. This is what mission is. Not that we loved Him, but that He loved us. This is how we know that we live in Him, that He lives in us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them. There is no fear in love, by the way. There's no fear in mission. Wrap your head around that. Not if it's driven by love. In fact, if you feel great fear in the mission work you're doing, you have a deficit of love. The thing to fix is not courage. The thing to fix is love. Where is the reservoir of love for those people or for God? I would say if you're afraid, it's because you don't love them enough yet. And then he says these words, we love because he first loved us. This is the proto-narrative upon our lives that we have been loved by God. We're the objects of his love. And because of that, we have no choice. We're totally compelled to go love other people. We just can't not do it. It's not possible. It would be to live in total betrayal of the thing that defines us and makes us who we are. To be loved by God, listen, stay with me. I know it's getting a little tedious. Please stick with me. To be loved by God is to be changed by that love. And then, how is it to be changed? Fundamentally, to be loved by God, fully and totally, utterly loved by God, changes something in us that we begin to love what he loves. It changes our affections. And again, if we're tempted or if we are drawn to other affections, to lesser loves, if we're drawn to disordered loves, it is because we have not fully accepted or embraced the greatness of the love of God for us. Christ's love, he says, compels us. In fact, I think you could almost swap the word mission for every occurrence the word love happens in the New Testament. Stay with me. They're almost synonymous. So you could almost, every time you see the word love, just simply replace it with the word mission, and you'll begin to understand what mission is. Every occurrence can be replaced. Mission is patient. Mission is kind. Mission does not boast. Mission keeps no record of wrongs, you know. If I have not mission, profits nothing. This is how we know what mission is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for his friends. This is how we know what mission is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for his friends. We do mission because mission was first done to us. Mission is from God, and everyone who does mission is born of God and knows God. For God had a mission to the world, and so he gave his only begotten Son. The mission is sending. And the love of God is forever perfected and redefined by the sending of the Son to us. Love and mission are synonyms. They are cruciform synonyms. Thank you, Augustine. Love God and do whatever you please. This is his whole line. Love God, do whatever you please, for the soul trained in love to God will do nothing to offend the one who is beloved. The soul trained in love to God will do nothing to offend the one who is beloved. It's maybe even like Paul in Galatians. The only thing that matters, he says, is faith working itself out through love. Faith expressing itself to love. Guys, I'm simplifying your life for you. I'm simplifying mission for you. So let's do this. Let's work together to build a little list here. So I want to talk about what needs to exist before we can engage as missionaries. So what are the preconditions that you think or you've seen that need to sort of exist before a person takes on mission or enters into some kind of mission? So preconditions. For mission. What needs to exist before we do it? Just talk to me.
Accepting that God loves you.
There you go. Okay. Can you imagine not doing that? I mean, have we seen that? What happens if a person goes off and starts to try to do mission, but they themselves have not really received this gift? And you don't really know what you're offering, do you? It's just sort of bullying people or trying to convince people or getting people to join your thing or whatever. Yeah.
It's a club.
It's a club, yeah. Or it's like self-righteous, like, I don't know, I'm sure this happens all the time. I mean, John Wesley was doing mission before he was an actual Christian, before he had experienced the love of God. He was a Anglican priest. It's possible. You could just be like, well, this is right. Metaphysically, this is a correct thing, so I'm going to go teach people to believe this, but I've never really experienced it myself. Other preconditions. Yeah, Johnny. Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. Did you? Yeah. Posture of worship. Say more about that.
I've been wrestling with this plan, and just keep coming back to when you really grasp who God is. That's the fundamental response. It's to worship Him. Do what comes to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe a connection with the lost world or outside
Some kind of connection, somewhere to go.
a destination that you should travel to or something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Just in a Christian bubble. We all know
It's really hard to do mission if all your only friends are Christians. Yeah. And we've seen that. Yep. So you have some connections and engagement with people outside the family of faith, but you see them correctly. You understand them. Yeah. Not in a worldly way. Other preconditions?
Dying to oneself. Is that definitely not required? You should have to do that before you.
What do you guys think? What's the answer to that question?
It's ongoing, but I also hear what you're saying, because the point of the ambassador is someone who acts on behalf of someone else. So
Yeah.
you do have to first die to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who I am.
I'm not the king, I'm the ambassador.
Right.
That's the
Yeah.
first step.
Otherwise, like you said, you're just making it about you.
I think that's probably well said. I think that it's kind of like marriage. So you make a covenant vow that you have no idea what you're saying. Am I wrong? You have some vague idea of what it means,
Forever.
but but you don't really know what it means until later. So it is later. But it also, you still have to make that, you have to lay down your life as best you understand that in the beginning. You say, Lord, here's my life, take it, Peter saying, I'll never deny you, I'll do anything you say, I'd rather die, Good try, that was a good, right thing to say. He didn't really know what he was saying. He was going to come up short in that promise later, but he tried. He meant that there is that. So you make a sort of aspiration of laying down your life. Anything else? What any other preconditions? Have to be there before. Yeah, and that's probably related to this idea of like laying down your life, total sacrifice, is to realize that whatever plans you have for your life aren't as good as his plans. And actually to say, I think, God, I know you want this for me, and you kind of have this trajectory laid out for me. I just think I have a better idea. I think I can make a better plan for myself. That lacks the fear of the Lord. It's not realizing who you're dealing with or who you're talking to. Right. Here's the three I'll give you as preconditions. One, love for God and people. So that's already up there, which comes from being loved first. So actually, I would say a precondition of mission is you have to love the people you're being sent to. You have to have a heart, a burden, affection. If you say, I'm going to go to those people because they're just so evil and they're so bad, and they're all demonic, and God's sending me there. I would say, if I had any kind of authority in your life, I would say, please, you cannot go there. You are denied. Yeah, you're not allowed to go there. You are rejected. Your application for mission is rejected. You have to love and have affection and have a burden for the people you're sent to. But the only way that comes to the human heart is by being first loved by God. By being filled up somehow with a supernatural sense of like, I'm full. You can't go looking for love in the place of mission. You can't try to fill that hole in yourself from the place of mission. That's number one. Number two, I think a precondition is an understanding of the ministry of reconciliation itself. What is it you're being sent to do? So we need to have an understanding of the work of God in time to renew all things and to establish his kingdom in the earth and to set his Son upon the throne of his kingdom, to bring everything into conformity with his will by destroying all the work of the evil one. This is the great work of reconciliation of which you have taken on a piece of it. But if you don't really understand what you're doing, you're just going to go give meals to people or something like that. I think a precondition to actually do meaningful mission is to understand the kingdom of which you are a part, of which you bear witness. And to know that actually the end game of the whole thing is for all things to be brought into conformity to his Son and to underneath the reign of his Son, and for everything to be renewed. It is total reconciliation. That's the big game, the big mission of which you are playing some small part. By the way, I've talked about this before, so I won't belabor it, but the shape that mission takes is threefold. So again, what does it mean what is the ministry of reconciliation? What is mission? To understand it is the reign of Christ being brought into all things, which will happen. It is inevitable. And so it is to speed the day of its coming by our obedience and faithfulness. That's what we're doing. But the shape that it takes, the shape that mission takes, it's the same over 2,000 years. It is threefold. It is the proclamation of the message of reconciliation. It is confrontation of evil, and it is healing and compassion and action. Those are the three forms, the three shapes in which mission takes. Proclamation of the ministry of reconciliation, verbal persuasion, bringing people into the message. Confrontation of evil, and that can be in the supernatural, or it can just be like, I don't know, this person lost their job unfairly, unjustly. We're going to go get some money. We're going to give them some money. We're going to get them a bridge loan or whatever. That's confronting evil, doing justice. And then third is compassionate and healing action. So things that bring wholeness, temporary, albeit, ease suffering, bring temporary wholeness to people. Those are the three forms which mission takes. So understanding, that's a precondition. And then thirdly, calling and clarity on where you've been sent. Guys, nobody said this. I'm so sad. Calling. What's a precondition to mission? You got to know where you're sent.
We said it over here.
I bet you did. I bet you did. You're too quiet. That's your problem. Well, good. Someone had it. I mean, calling and or clarity, whether you call it that or not, but you have clarity on where you have been sent. You know exactly the people or place you're meant to go. That is a precondition. Now you can ask yourself, how am I doing on those three? Just do a quick little diagnostic for yourself Am I really in touch with the love of God for me and for the people I've been sent to? Do I have a good, full understanding of what the ministry of reconciliation is? And do I have clarity on where I've been sent? And what's interesting about that, and we don't have time to talk about it, is that these things evolve over time. So you used to have had clarity on where you were sent, but maybe something has changed in your life and you have to renegotiate that question.
I don't think understanding evolve, like as culture changes, it's like it's a new election cycle. Like there's a moment like, okay, what is the coming, the rule and reign of Jesus in this moment, in this the zeitgeist of this moment, or cultural moment, whatever. Like coming to a fresh understanding. Maybe it's a fresh understanding. Maybe it's not like new, but I think even that, like there's a renewal process.
Absolutely. So even if you stay called to the same people in the same place, that the shape of that mission might change based on the time. Yep. It was worth the price right there. Worth the time coming. Okay. Second question. So what are threats then? What are threats to ongoing mission? Just give me some ideas. Just pop them off here. Yep. Comfort. Okay. Pride. Greed. We're just 7 deadly sins now.
Catholics.
Burnout. Okay. Yeah, ongoing mission, that is a threat. Okay, lack of spiritual growth. What else? Okay, isolation. I'm sorry, what? I'm kidding. Disordered loves.
Hey Ben, over here, you whispered complexity. I don't know what he meant by that, but
Sounded good.
it sounded like, like I was thinking when he said it, sometimes you don't know exactly what to do, so like you stagnate. It's so complicated, there's so much need. What do I do first?
Overwhelming, yeah.
It's overwhelming.
Ambition can't be
Yeah, or selfish. Yeah. Emma, were you trying to mousily raise your hand there? Yeah. Say that again.
Lies, especially within our culture.
Lies?
Lies.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Hurt. Yeah. So if 2 Corinthians 5 is kind of like defining what the ministry of reconciliation is, it's interesting to me 2 Corinthians 6 is a kind of definition of why it breaks down. It's really interesting. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but if you look at that second text I've given you there, Paul is actually giving us 3 reasons why mission fails. What the threats this is what I see in the text. The first is suffering itself, an inability to endure. So he says, we put no stumbling block on anyone's path, so our ministry won't be discredited. Rather, as servants of God, we commend ourselves in every way in great endurance, in troubles, in hardship, in distress, in beatings, imprisonments, in riots, in hard work, in sleepless nights, in hunger, in purity, understanding, and patience, and kindness, and the Holy Spirit, in truthful speech, and so on, in dishonor, bad report, good report, genuine, regarded as imposters, all that. That stuff is all about mission. When you enter into mission, you're going to hit a lot of resistance. And probably, I think part of what he's saying, and I would say my list for you in terms of threats or mission killers is a lack of resilience. The first thing is, are we actually prepared to go through something? And either we we're led to believe that it would be all, unicorns and rainbows, or that would be all success or something, or we just didn't have the resilience somehow to enter into it. Now, it's interesting to me that everybody is going to go through some kind of gauntlet. Everyone is going to go through suffering, and some people make it through that, and they're stronger because of it, and actually they go deeper in their relationship with God, and their mission itself deepers, and some people quit. And I don't really always understand why that is. But I will say that there is some relationship we have when suffering comes and we push away from Jesus instead of towards him. And there will come a time in your life, in your ministry, in your mission, where you'll have that choice. Where things will be hard and there will be adversity, and you'll have a choice to whether to draw into Jesus or to push him away. And that's a massive mission killer. Second, and I think this will be a surprise to you or new to you, but he says this, we have spoken freely to you, Corinthians, and open wide our hearts to you. We're not withholding our affection from you, but you are withholding yours from us. Do you hear that? You hear what's happening there? And as a fair exchange, and speak as to my children, open wide your hearts also. The second big threat that I've seen to mission is actually a loss of affection for the apostolic leaders in your life. A heartbreak between the people in your life that called you to mission in the first place. And something can happen where there's some sort of break between us and them, or we just get tired or whatever, and we want to push away from mission, so we push them away. We discredit them. By the way, the Corinthians were deconstructing before anybody was deconstructing. The Corinthians were canceling before we thought of that. Okay, so what is Paul saying? He's saying, guys, you're canceling me. You deconstructed me. That's on you. Our hearts are still open to you. We love you. We never stopped loving you. You stopped loving us. So the threat to mission, one of the threats to mission, is actually to dishonor the apostolic voices in your life. The people that are calling you back to mission, to start going, that's not even right. It's unbelievable to me to see people we have walked with in covenant, to see them not just walking away from us. That's fine. I mean, be wherever you want to be. Go wherever you want to be. Friends with whoever you want to be friends with. But actually turning away and saying, we shouldn't help people. We shouldn't care about people. The gospel isn't true anymore. We don't care about truth, or we don't care about even compassion anymore. That actually the death of mission in their own hearts, the only way you're going to do that is if you villainize the apostolic voice in your life. This is why, look at what Paul says in 1 Thessalonians 5:13. He said, now we ask you, brothers and sisters, to acknowledge those who work hard among you, who care for you in the Lord, he says, and who admonish you. Hold them in highest regard and love because of their work, and live at peace with each other. And something the devil does is actually take the apostolic voice, or the apostolic leaders, people in our life, and if we can dislike them, if we can hate them, if we can cut them down, that separates us from mission. So if I'm no longer friends with the apostolic person in my life, then I actually have to push myself away completely from mission totally. Do you understand? It's like a company I used to work for, and I hate that person that was my manager there, so I want nothing to do with the company at all. That is tragic. But there's a conflation that happens there. And the third thing he says, if you look at that last little bit, it says, don't be yoked together with unbelievers, for what does righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light and darkness have? What harmony is there between Christ and Balaam? Or what does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? What agreement is there between the temple of God and idols? For there is a temple of the living God. And so, look, God has said, come out, essentially. So the third kind of threat, I think, mission killer here is being yoked to unbelievers. It's somehow to step into the world of unbelief and to love those people fully, to open your heart and affection completely to them, but to not be converted by them, to not be missionized by them, to not become them, to not start thinking, actually, their ideas are better than my ideas, right? their gods are better than my gods. And I promise you, they have gods. Their worship, every human person is built for worship, and they're worshiping. Everyone is worshiping. This is why the first commandment is, you should have no other gods before me. Why? Because every human person will worship. There is no scenario where a person says, I don't, but I'm irreligious, I don't worship. Of course they worship. It's just getting to the bottom of what that is, of exactly what their idol is, of exactly what they worship. So if you enter into a world that does not worship the living God, the one true God, the only God that actually loves you, that doesn't need anything from you, that isn't trying to take advantage of you or hurt you or destroy you, which is all other gods do that. Right? All other gods don't love you. All other gods didn't die for you. All other gods won't care for the fullness and wholeness and flourishing of your life. They will eat you alive. Somehow, some way, there will be a journey towards your own destruction if you worship any other god. This is why the first command is the most compassionate command. That's why God is saying, it's not because he's arrogant. He's like, hey, I am so narcissistic that I want everyone to worship me. He's saying, if you don't worship me, you'll be destroyed. All other gods want to kill you. I'm the only one that wants you to have life. I'm the only one that doesn't need anything from you. So I can love you and lay myself down for you. So love me. Worship me. Worship anything else, you're in big, big, big trouble. So what is another threat to mission? We get into that world. We really think they're great. I mean, this is true for human sexuality. This can be true for politics. This can be true for, I don't know, dabbling with certain kinds of thinking or even sin or evil. And the more we get in that world, the more we think, well, what's so wrong with this? Yeah. I think, yeah, that's a very practical example. I mean, for me, my bigger concern for you would be your heart. It would be that you have to believe something. You have to question reality, Guys, whatever God has said to you, whatever you have heard from God, whether that's in hearing the gospel, whether that's in your study and understanding of Scripture, whatever you have heard from God is the closest you come to reality. I'm talking epistemology. How do you know anything? How do we know what we know about life or the world or anything? And the things you know from God are as close to reality as anything you have. Everything else is fuzzy. And so when you start to question that or push away from that, you're making a massive epistemological mistake. You start saying, well, I think I can define the world in my own way or some different way. You're just in big trouble. Okay, third category, and we'll wrap up here. Ideas for thriving in mission. Give me some ideas. How do you make it? How have you kept your heart in it all these years, or whatever time it's been, all these many years, Maya? Prayer and fasting, okay.
I just started my 6 weeks.
But it's the longest 6 weeks of my life, Community. Meditate on the Word. How do you do it?
Testimonies, anytime like this is all bull crap, and like my mom didn't die from cancer.
Good point. Good. That's great. Listening to Testament, remembering. We have our own testimonies even, which we forget, which we bury. Yeah, look at Jesus. Yeah, and mission can be very mundane. It can be very dirty. It's every day. It's hot and sweaty and ordinary. So how do you, maybe part of succeeding and staying in it is you keep your heart and your head above it somehow, Say more about that. So not boundaries in the sense of like, I'm not available to God, but like, I do this. This is what I'm called to do, so I can't do everything. Yeah. Yep.
And keeping yourself submitted to wise counsel.
Okay. Yep. I'll give you a couple of thoughts I had. This is kind of how I'll wrap up. I mean, I was sort of praying for you. You know, what would I want you to have? And one thought I had is the discipline of the Jesuits. You know, the Jesuits would be a religious order. So religious orders, they're monks, and they take all religious orders in the Catholic Church. They take 3 vows. They take a vow of poverty, chastity, and obedience. So the Jesuits, like any other monastic order, take those 3 vows. But Jesuits take a 4th vow. So they're different from other monastic orders by this 4th vow that they take. It's so amazing. It's what makes us think we're Jesuits. We're close to we're non-celibate Jesuits. Some of us are celibate. Some of us aren't. Yeah. But even fidelity in marriage is a kind of celibacy, isn't it? It's a refusal to break whatever the sort of sexual commitment that we have is. By the way, Jesuits, Franciscans came from who? St. Francis, good. The Benedictines, who's their guy? St. Benedict. You guys are sharp. You're really sharp. You're really with me. Right? These orders, religious orders, follow, like the father of their order is usually a monk or a saint or something. Who do the Jesuits follow? Jesus. The Jesuits are called the Society of Jesus. How's that for winning the monk game? You know what I mean? Oh, you got Francis? He's pretty good. We have Jesus. They're called the Society of Jesus. And what makes them different from other monastic orders is the 4th vow that they make. And the 4th vow they make is to go anywhere they are sent in the world at any time. Did you read the book Silence or see the movie Silence? Where it's Jesuits that are sent to Japan to die. But whoever your boss is, your sort of brother, master, leader guy, he can tell you to go anywhere in the world at any time, and you go. You pick up and go. Jesuits are cool because actually one of their lasting legacies is schools. There's schools all over the world. I think there's something like 3,000 Jesuit schools around the world in all kinds of places that mission had trouble going, but the Jesuits went and started schools. But I love that discipline to hold in our own hearts. Well, 2 things. 1, not entertaining the notion of quitting. Part of what makes a Jesuit is that's just what they are. They already decided. You don't get out of that. Do you understand? You're not like, this year, should I be a Jesuit? You know? Nope. It's that steadfastness. I feel a little bit like that, exactly. I feel a little bit like that, like I had a conversation with a friend a couple years ago, and we were just sitting down. We hadn't seen each other in a while. And he was like, Brian, please tell me you're still walking with the Lord. Because he like, I have seen so many people fall away. And I'm like, I looked at him and I said, what else do I got to do, man? I'm like, I already played my hand. I already put all in on this hand. That's it. The hand that I played was for life. I already did that. You don't pull that back. I'm already all in on Jesus. And he was like, exactly, that me too. So there was something that we found in each other, in each other's eyes in that moment of like, who even told you could get out of it? This is why, by the way, it's like I already said, I'm going to give my whole life to this and see what happens. So I have to see it through. I have to see it through. And are there ups and downs? Yes. Are there times where I'm like, what have I done? Yes. But it's like, I'm already a Jesuit. The vows are made. The vows are made. By the way, marriage is similar in the sense that it's based on a vow. It's started by a vow. It's meant to be held together by a vow. And by the way, I will solve your marriage problems right now. You ready? I'm going to solve, in one sentence, I'm going to solve all your marriage problems. Are you listening? Your husband or wife is perfect for you. The whole job is figuring out why. That's it. That's it. So if you think they're not perfect for you, you just haven't figured out why yet. You've got to figure out why that person is just what you need, because they are. Anyway, same thing with that. It breaks down because we start to entertain the possibility of walking away when the possibility really shouldn't exist, doesn't exist. But that unbelievable vow that they make to just go anywhere at any time, I want that for you. I want you to carry that in your heart, to feel that at any time God could take you, send you anywhere, and you would go. As much as it is possible, physically, you would go. 2, I would want you to have the prayer life of the Moravians. You remember those guys? There's a guy called Count Zinzendorf, in 17th century Germany, and they just prayed. They prayed 24 hours a day. There's a few hundred of them. They did night and day prayer, linked together. They prayed in pairs. They prayed in, segments of time. And they just kept 24-hour prayer going for such a long time. And that act of intimacy and connection to God, the staying connected to the vine, because they stayed so connected to the vine, the burden for mission just kept growing, and it grew to such intensity. They're most famous, the Moravians are most famous for being known for their work in the West Indies. And the best and only way for them to get to the West Indies, these are like blanch white people. The only way for them to get to the West Indies was to sell themselves, put themselves into slavery. And most of them, many if not most of them, died on slave ships trying to get to the West Indies to preach the gospel to slaves and to people of the West Indies. They were sent people. And their rallying cry was, may the Lamb receive what's the line? May the Lamb receive the gift of his sacrifice or his slaughter. I would want you to have that kind of intimacy, a life of dedicated prayer, of connecting to him, which then turns into burden for mission. It's not one or the other. It's not prayer or mission. They are sides of a coin. They are the same thing. And the last thing I would say is just that you would let go of performance and growth measurements and selfish ambition. You probably aren't there anymore, and most of us don't really deal with that as much as we once may have, but it doesn't matter how many people are in your ministry. You're not better or worse missionary because of the outcomes that you do. I just need you to hear me say that. You need to let me have authority to say that over you. That is not something that matters to God. The effect, the outcomes, how good you are, how big you are, how much you're growing, how successful you are, those are all just distractions. They're not totally wrong, but they're just wrong enough. They're just misunderstanding something about God. Guys, mission, this is my experience of doing this now for 30 some years. Mission is an art. It's love, it's fire, it's light. It's not science. It's not to be controlled or counted. It's the mysterious work of God worked out through us. And we ought to strain to hear the voice of the one we love tell us who to love today or this year, and where to go to give that love, and to destroy all that is not love, and to lay down our very lives, not just for them who are unloved or shrouded in the shadows of lovelessness, but to lay down our lives for Him who loved us, who was slain for us. Mission is really heart and emotion and uncertainty. It's experiments and iteration. It's obedience wrapped in faith. It takes guts, not brains, to be a missionary. Now, that's a fine how do you do from somebody who spent his life trying to be a missiologist. Listen to me. Hear me on this. It takes guts, not brains, to be a missionary. It's a life of butterflies in the stomach, wonder in the mind, and heaviness in the heart. It's a life of power and powerlessness. And I have been fruitful at times in my mission work and barren at times in my mission work. I have been a master strategist and I have been a bumbling messenger. And I can tell you, please hear me, I can tell you the difference in the outcomes is marginal at best. Barely noticeable. When I'm making strategic moves and every religious leader, every Christian leader in the country is calling me up and saying, tell us what to do, Brian. And the actual outcomes, when I'm just barely figuring it out, when I'm barely hanging on, and what you're doing, and that stuff is so marginal. Well, it's just enough, isn't it? It's just enough to make us believe our own press. And get distracted from the heart of God, which is simply to be obedient. It is simply to just be faithful. It is to say yes with a heart of love to the people He's asked you to go. And the outcomes are up to God. Now, do I want to see growth? Of course. Do I want to see more people come to the kingdom? Yes. Do I want to see massive problems, social problems solved? Of course. Am I going to spend the rest of my life trying to figure out how to do that? You better believe it. But what I'm telling you is all of that stuff cannot be the thing that drives us. Because you can't control it anyway. When we were kids, we would say, I'm going over to so-and-so's house. I'd say that to my mom, I'm going over to so-and-so's house. And she would say, be home before dark. Be home before dark. And then we'd be out and we'd be playing. This is when people would go outside, guys. And the sun would start to go down and you'd feel that clock ticking, the sun go down. And you knew you had to hurry. There was an urgency coming on us because it was getting dark. And so you wanted to quickly find your bike or your ball and you'd better do it now and you better do it before it became dark. Because all parents know and all kids learn that the dark is the end. And all days come to an end. And all play and all work is ended by the dark. And as sure as you're breathing, the dark is coming. For you, for your ministry, for the stuff you're currently doing. It's not meant to last forever. Your enterprise, your project. There is an end to the day of your life. For all of us, the dark is coming. And we have to get home before dark. As long as it is day, this is the words of Jesus. Beautiful. As long as it is day, we must do the works of Him who sent me. That's it. For as long as it is day, do the work of Him who sent you. For night is coming when no one can work. And while I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And I think Jesus would have no problem saying, while you're in the world, you're the light of the world. A city on a hill that cannot be hidden. And I think again of the line from the prophet in Joel 2. Let all who live in the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming, a day of darkness. But he says this about the people of God, about you and me, about simple little bumbling people like us. This is what he says. Like the dawn spreading across the mountains. And a mighty army comes, such as never was in ancient times, nor ever will be in ages to come. You are a part of that army of light. I know it's late. I think Jeremy's going to come up and lead us into communion. There have been times in the last several years where I was close to despairing, where I was, the target of criticism and hurt, misunderstanding, whatever. And I can remember being in Ireland. I was actually at a monastery at the time, and I was trying to take some time to pray. I was at this monastery in the center of Ireland, beautiful place. And I was feeling, as you do, that feeling of like, I'm groping for answers. I'm groping for, how do I handle all of this? In fact, I just felt a tremendous weight on me. Like, how do I solve all this? What do I do? Or I felt the weight of the world. I felt like the weight of the underground, the weight of other projects we were involved in were somehow attached to me. And I went on this walk and it rained. It started raining. Some of you heard me tell this story. I just got caught in this terrible deluge. And once you get wet enough, it doesn't matter anymore. And actually something really beautiful happens where once you're totally wet, you can just keep going because you're good. You're already wet. We try so hard, by the way, to not get wet, to avoid getting wet. But once you're wet, there's something nice about a walk in the rain when you're completely wet. Try it, maybe, one of these times. And so I just stayed on this walk for some time, just, in this downpour. And I heard very clearly from God three words. And so I'll leave you with these. I felt God say to me, my story is long. My people are everywhere. Play your part. The work of God, the story of God started way before your microchurch. It started way before the underground. It started way before you started caring at all about Jesus or mission or other people. It's a long story. His people are everywhere. You think the whole thing is going to break down if you leave? You think somehow that the whole mission of God is dependent on you in this one place and time? It isn't. He has people everywhere. But play your part. It's like a line in a play that was written just for you. A part that was written just for you. That no one can say but you. Staging a moment in the story, in the whole great, beautiful, incredible story. It's just for you, meant for you. You're the one that's meant to say these lines. Play your part. Do that, and one day we will sit with God in the chambers of His glorious kingdom as celebrants of the wedding of the Lamb. Lord, thank you for this community. Thank you for these missionaries. Thank you for the call on our lives to retell your story.